Hey, what's up, everybody? Archaic Records here. My name is Jamie, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee, and today I've got a real treat for you. I'm going to be ranking the studio albums by my all-time favorite artist, Morrissey. I first began pledging allegiance to the Pope of Mope back in my senior year of high school when one of my fellow students loaned me a copy of Morrissey's 1990 album, Bona Drag. And just after a few short listens, I was completely hooked. Not long after that, it became my mission in life to get my grubby mitts on everything I could find. It was through that process that I went back and discovered Morrissey's catalog up to that point, including my formal introduction to the greatest band of all time, the Smiths. Now, of course, I was always aware that Morrissey was the frontman of the Smiths, but it wasn't until I went back and researched his early catalog that I actually went back and listened to those albums. And needless to say that they are the greatest band of all time, at least in my humble opinion. My Morrissey fandom has been going on for 30 years strong, shows no signs of slowing down. To me, he is the greatest singer-songwriter in the history of rock and roll. Nobody has ever sounded like him. And just on a personal note, there's never been another artist with all the music that I love, and there's millions of bands and artists and albums that I just worship. But there's just never been an artist that I relate to in the way that I relate to Morrissey, and I don't think that there ever could be. Now, as many of you are undoubtedly aware, it has become quite trendy over the past few years for certain factions in our society to try to hang Morrissey from the gallows of cancellation based on his insistence of practicing critical thinking, his refusal to bow before the overlords of conformity, and his innate ability to offend the weak and unhinged. My first response to this is to recommend that anybody who supports or participates in quote-unquote cancel culture in any way, shape, or form, seek counseling. Second, if you actually think that this pathetic little campaign will result in any significant success, I suggest that you are gravely underestimating the Morrissey fan base. We are fanatical, loyal, devoted as any other fan base in rock and roll. Now, we may not have the raw numbers of some of the more notorious fan bases in the music world, but we are no less devout. We may have had a few defectors, those who have denounced their fandom or sold off their memorabilia. But I assure you that the vast majority of us will not be peer pressured into deprogramming simply based on the opinions of others. For Morrissey fans, it's nothing new to be dismissed or snickered at. We're used to it. We know where we stand in life. We were never the cool kids. We are the outsiders, and we really don't care what you think. Or at least I don't. Anyway, that's my little dissertation. I pre-wrote that because sometimes when I'm staring at this camera, I lose track of what I want to say, so I want to get that out of the way. Anyway, let's get into this ranking. There are 19 albums on this ranking, which include all 4 of the Smiths studio albums and all of Morrissey's solo studio albums. There aren't any of the Smiths compilations or best ofs or lives. Now, there are 2 albums on this compilation that are technically compilations on this list that are technically compilations. We'll get to them when we get there. The reason why I put them on the list, 1, is because I just wanted to. And 2, because both of these albums kind of feel more like albums. They don't necessarily feel like compilations to me. So there are 19 albums on this list. In a recent article on the NME website, Morrissey himself ranked his own catalog. Now, when he ranked his catalog, he ranked everything. So on his list, there were 30 albums because he did the best ofs and all the compilations and everything. On my list, there are only 19. So I took the list of Morrissey's ranking and I deleted the ones that I didn't rank and I re-listed his. And I will compare where I ranked mine to his. And I know you're just about to bubble over with excitement. Anyway, let's get into this. There are 19 albums on this list. This was somewhat challenging for me. I actually had done this ranking a while back for another project I was working on, and it took me quite a while to get through it. It was interesting, it was surprising, and it was kind of fun. There were some surprises on this ranking list for me. So we'll get right into it with number 19. This album came out in 1995. It was produced by Steve Lillywhite. And this album is called Southpaw Grammar. Now, unfortunately, there has to be an album at the bottom of the list, and unfortunately, this is it for me. First off, the two bookend songs on this album are both over 10 minutes long. I never really quite understood the reason for that. I personally get sort of squeamish when it comes to songs that are extra long. Maybe that's the punk rock in me. This album has, I would say, 3 or 4 songs I really like a lot on this album. I really like the song Boy Racer a lot. That's probably my favorite song off this album. The Operation is good. I do like the song Reader Meet Author. Dangin' 'em Dave is okay. Don't Worry, Do Your Best and Don't Worry is okay. And Best Friend on the Payroll is okay. I don't particularly like the songs Teachers Are Afraid of the Pupils or Southpaw. I also mentioned this album was produced by Steve Lillywhite, who is a producer I usually really love. I don't know what happened on this record, though. And I'm not one of those people that normally sits around and talks about production and whines and cries and praises it or complains about it. But I really hate the production on this album. To me, it just sounds like you're listening to it through mud. I really don't like the production on Morrissey's voice. And like I said, unfortunately, one album has to be the last one, and for me, it's 1995, Southpaw Grammar. I don't really listen to this one very often. And on Morrissey's ranking, he had that one at number 13. So, a little bit higher than I had it. All right, number 18 for me is from 2014, produced by Joe Cicerelli. World Peace is None of Your Business. Now, this album, to me, is much better than Southpaw Grammar. This album is almost 10 years old, which blows me away because it seems like it just came out yesterday. And for me, I think this is an album that I just still can't really figure out how I feel about it. The songs on this record I really love a lot, but there's a lot of stuff on here that just kind of hasn't really stuck to me. I really like the title track, World Peace is None of Your Business. I really like the song Neil Cassidy Drops Dead. Earth is the Loneliest Planet is cool. Staircase at the University. There's several songs on this album I like. Again, he's never done an album of complete clunkage. And again, I hate that some of these albums have to be at the bottom of the ranking, but that's just how it goes. Mount Joy is okay, but a lot of this album to me is just kind of monotonous. It gets a little repetitive. To me, now I've talked to Morrissey fans that when it came to Southpaw Grammar, they love that one. I've talked to fans that think this is one of the best, most underrated records he ever did. And I'm not here to disagree with you, but for me, I still can't figure this record out, and I know it's almost 10 years old. But for me, it's number 18. And on the Morrissey ranking for the Enemy, he put it at number 1. Okay. I can't possibly agree with that. Not with the stuff coming up, but he, I'm sure, has his reasons. I don't want to accuse the guy of being ingenuine, but when you put that at number 1, it makes me wonder. That's all I'm going to say about that. All right, for me, number 17. This album came out in 2006, produced by Tony Visconti. Is Ringleader of the Tormentors. Nice crack on my CD. Don't like that very much. This album to me was a big disappointment coming after You Are the Quarry. I definitely like this record a lot more than the last two. I think this record is really pretty good. Again, it's unfortunate some of these albums have to be towards the back end of the ranking because I think that this album is really awesome in a lot of ways. I love the album, or the song I Will See You in Far Off Places. You Have Killed Me is awesome. The Youngest Was the Most Loved is good. I love the song In the Future When All's Well. I love that song. Life is a Pigsty is okay. On the Streets I Ran, I really like that song a lot. I Just Want to See the Boy Happy. And At Last I'm Born is good. I do think one reason why this album is further down on the ranking is because it does have my all-time least favorite Morrissey song. And again, I hate saying that, man. I hate saying anything like that. But the song, Dear God, Please Help Me. It's probably my least favorite Morrissey song. That's a skipper every time. And on the NME ranking list, Morrissey had that one at number 2. I don't know if we're going to agree much on this one, Steve. Anyway, for me, number 16 from 2017, produced by Joe Cicerelli, Low in High School. I actually really like this album a lot. Again, some of these being towards the back end of the ranking don't mean much because I do love a lot of these albums. My Love, I'd Do Anything for You. I love that song. I Wish You Lonely is awesome. I love the song Jackie's Only Happy when she's up on the stage, and the song I Spent the Day in Bed, which is probably one of my favorite newer Morrissey songs. I love that song. In Your Lap, I'm not huge into that song. I really like the song The Girl from Tel Aviv. All the Young People Must Fall in Love. I really like that song a lot. When You Open Your Legs, not really into that one. I like the song Who Will Protect Us from the Police, and the song Israel is pretty good. 2017, Low in High School. And on the ranking for the NME, Morrissey put this one at number 12. And I had it at 16, so a little closer on that one at least. All right, for me now, number 15. This one was kind of a surprise for me how low it was. Again, an album I really like. This album was produced by Steve Lillywhite, came out in 1997, Maladjusted. I think that this is one of the more forgotten or overlooked albums within the Morrissey fan community. I've talked to some people that really don't like this album at all. This was kind of a strange album for Morrissey. I got it right when it came out. It definitely had a different sound. Some people said he was sort of only half interested in this record. I really like this album a lot. I'm also sentimental. This was the first tour I ever saw. But I love the title track. I love the song Alma Matters, Ambitious Outsiders. I really like a lot of this album. Papa Jack, Ammunition. I love that song. Why to Receive, Royce Keane, He Cried. Lots of great songs off this record. I don't understand why some people really diss this album. I actually really like this one. Produced by Steve Lillywhite. I'm not sure if I mentioned that already. And on the NME ranking, Morrissey himself put this one at number 16. And I had it at 15. So we're getting closer. We're getting a little closer there. I like that. Anyway, number 14. Sorry. Number 14 for me. The first of 2 albums on this list that are technically compilations from 2009. The album is Swords. This album was produced by Tony Visconti. And I really like this album a lot. Again, I put the 2 compilations that are compilations on this list because to me they feel more like albums. To me this feels like an album. This doesn't necessarily feel like a compilation. I love the song Good Looking Man About Town. Actually, there's a lot on this record I really like a lot. I saw this tour, and I thought that this was actually one of the better tours I ever saw, too. If you don't like it, don't look at. If you don't like me, don't look at me. It's one of my mottos in life. My Dearest Love, Sweetie Pie, Christian Dior, Shame Is the Name, Munich Air Disaster. There's a lot of really awesome stuff on this record. Very overlooked, in my opinion. Obviously, it's technically a compilation that came out. There were 2 albums that came out in 2009. This was the second one. I really love Swords. Actually, I'm going to listen to Swords when I'm done with this because I haven't listened to it in a while. On the NME ranking himself, Morrissey put this one at number 8. So I like that. I mean, higher than I had it. But the fact that he put that one in the top 10, I think is very interesting. All right, for me now, number 13. This album came out in 2019, produced by Joe Cicerelli. This is Morrissey's cover album, California Sun. Now, I really love this album a lot. I think it would actually be higher on my list if it wasn't all covers. And I remember when this record was announced and it was known and it was made known that he was going to be doing an album of all covers, that sat kind of weird with me at first. Morrissey is such an amazing writer. He's so prolific. He's got just so much great material, always ready to go, that the thought of him doing an album of all covers seemed like kind of a tease at the time, but I think his execution on this record turned out to be absolutely amazing. I think this is a real vital piece of his catalog. He's got one of my favorite songs off this album, kicks it off, Morning Starship, which is a song by Jabriath, who is an artist that Morrissey's always pimping really hard. But my favorite song off this album is the song Days of Decision, which is an old Phil Ochs cover. Phil Ochs is my all-time favorite folk artist, and it's the best song on this album, I think. 2019, California Sun. And Morrissey, on his ranking for the NME, had that one at number 9. So I like that. All right, for me now, number 12 from 2020, produced by Joe Cicerelli. Morrissey's, up to this point, his newest studio record, I Am Not a Dog on a Chain. And man, I really like this album a lot. I have talked to some fans who really don't like this album. I remember somebody even told me one time they wish this album had never been made. I don't understand that, because I think this is a very awesome record. Obviously, it came out during the pandemic year of 2020. He didn't get to tour on this record, so I feel like this record is just kind of like sort of overlooked and forgotten. But I love a lot of this record. I love the song Jim Falls. Love Is on Its Way Out. I love the title track, I Am Not a Dog on a Chain. My favorite song on this record is What Kind of People Live in These Houses. I've heard some people say they don't like it because that song's too mean. I don't really understand what that means. I love the song Knockabout World. Darling, I Hug a Pillow. Once I Saw the River Clean. Oh my God, I love that song. And The Secret of Music. That is a weird, wonderful, bizarre song. And I know I said earlier I get kind of squeamish with long songs. That song is... The Secret of Music is 7 minutes of just weird awesomeness. When I first heard that song, when I first listened to this record, that song kind of like, but I actually really love that song a lot. I'd say the two weakest songs on this one for me are Bobby, Don't You Think They Know, which I do like that song, and The Truth About Ruth, which isn't a song that I'm super into. From 2020. Produced by Joe Cicerelli. And on the Morrissey ranking list, he put this one at number 10. So I had it at number 12. All right, number 11 for me, just outside of the top 10. From 2009, produced by Jerry Finn. This album is called Years of Refusal. I really like this album a lot. This is a much different album. I mean, all of Morrissey's albums are different. That's one of the things I love about the guy is no two albums sound the same. He never repeats himself. But this is definitely a unique album in the catalog. It's a lot noisier. It's a lot clankier. It's a lot rockier. I don't often use the word raw when you describe Morrissey because he's not really a raw performer, but this album is a lot more raw. I love the production on his voice. I love his performance. I love the songwriting. I'm gushing a little bit. I admit it. I love the song Something Is Squeezing My Skull. Mama Lay Softly on the Riverbed. I love that song. Black Cloud. I'm Throwing My Arms Around Paris. I love that song. When Last I Spoke to Carol is a song that is not really my favorite. That's How People Grow Up. I really like that song. It's Not Your Birthday Anymore is okay. You Were Good in Your Time is good. Sorry Doesn't Help is great. And my favorite song off this album is I'm Okay by Myself. Again, I got this album right when it came out. And I was really surprised by how it sounded. Like I said, it was so much different than The stuff that came out around it, especially compared to Ringleader of the Tormentors, I thought this was a huge step up from Ringleader of the Tormentors. I love the sound on this record, and I love the production, and I love his voice on this one. I just couldn't squeeze into the top 10 because there's a lot of good stuff coming. And on his ranking list for the NME, Morrissey had that one at, if I can find it here, number 11. Oh, so we agree on that one. Awesome! All right, now we are getting into the top 10. It's getting tough now. This is where things start to get tough for me. So number 10 for me from 1991, produced by Clive Langer. The album is Kill Uncle. Now, this was, I think, the third or fourth album in the Morrissey catalog that I actually bought. And this one really threw me off at first. When I first got it and I first listened to it, I really didn't know how I felt about it. It was so much different than the ones I had got before it. And it was a lot more down-tempo, a lot more slow and melancholy. And for a long time, I could not figure out how I felt about this record. And at some point, it finally just clicked with me. And now, it's my 10th favorite. But this is an album that I come back to again and again and again, and I really love this album. Actually, this is one of the albums I listen to the most. When it comes time just to throw on a record and sit and listen to the whole thing start to finish, this is one of my always go-tos. I love the song Our Frank, Asian Rut, Sing Your Life, Mute Witness. Oh my God. King Lear. I love the song Driving Your Girlfriend Home, On the End of the Family Line, The Harsh Truth of the Camera Eye, which I'm still struggling with sitting here right now. Tony the Pony. I think if I had to pick a weakest song on this album, it would probably be Found, Found, Found. And I know that you don't care. So what am I even talking about? Anyway, this album came out in 1991, produced by Clive Langer. And on Morrissey's ranking list, he put it at number 18. I don't think so. All right, number 9. Now it's getting good. Now it's getting pretty good. From 1984, debut album by the greatest band of all time, The Smiths. In my opinion, this is the greatest debut album of all time, or at least the best I've ever heard. I know I haven't heard them all. But to me, this is the greatest debut album of all time. This wasn't necessarily the Smiths at the top of their game, but I think this album showed the potential of what they were going to become, which was the greatest band of all time. And for a debut effort, I don't think I've ever heard another debut album that comes even close to this one. Reel Around the Fountain, I love that song. You've Got Everything Now. Pretty Girls Make Graves. Oh my God. The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Still Ill. Hand in Glove. What Different... Oh my God. Can you just see that there's not anything really bad on this album? Suffer Little Children. If I had to pick a weakest song on this album, it would be the song Miserable Lie, which I do kind of like that song, except for Morrissey does these insane falsetto gymnastics in it that just kind of like grate a little bit. And if you're one of those people in the world that don't like Morrissey's voice as it is, you probably wouldn't like that song. But I love that album. I think it's the greatest debut album of all time. And on the Morrissey ranking for the NME, he put it at dead last. Yeah. Sure. All right, number 8 now for me. From 1994, produced by Steve Lillywhite. Vauxhall and I. I'm going to say it. Are you ready? I love this album. Man, now we're starting to get into like the classics. Now My Heart Is Full. I love that song. Spring Hill Gym. Holy crap. The song Billy Budd is okay. Hold On to Your Friends. I love that song. The More You Ignore Me. I know it's a big MTV radio hit. Don't Care. Love it. Why Don't You Find Out for Yourself? Oh my God. I'm Hated for Loving, Lifeguard Sleeping, Girl Drowning. I mean, this thing is just jammed with the jams. The Lazy Sunbathers, but the album ends on my favorite song on this album, not my all-time favorite song, but my favorite song on this album is Speedway. Oh my God, I love that song. For me, this one is number 8. This is another one I go back to, listen to all the time. I never get sick of it. And on his ranking for the NME, Morrissey had this one at number 5. So, good on ya, Steve. All right, number 7 for me from 1985. This album was produced by The Smiths, the band. Their second album, Meat is Murder. Again, now we're getting to the goods. This album just rules. I mean, just, oh my God. But it starts off with the Headmaster Ritual. I mean, come on. Rushmore Ruffians, I Want the One I Can't Have. There's not a bad song on this whole album. Honestly, there's not a bad song on this album. Produced by the band, came out in 1985, their second effort. Much better than the debut in 1984, which was great. And the band just got better and better and better as time went on. And like I said, it's unfortunate they imploded after only 4 records. I'm not one of those Smiths fans who necessarily sits around and pines for the band to ever reunite. Obviously now, with the passing of Andy Rourke recently, that window is closed. I'm grateful for the 4 albums that they put out. But it would have been interesting to see where the band would have gone had they not imploded after just 4 albums. But on the ranking for the NME, Morrissey himself had this one at number 14. I don't know about that. I love you, man, but I don't know about that. All right, number 6 for me from 1992. This album was produced by Mick Ronson of David Bowie fame. This was the second album I ever bought of his, and it is a classic. Your Arsenal. I mean, oh my God. You're going to need someone on your side. Glamorous Glue. There's not a bad song on this whole album. National Front Disco. Certain People I Know. We Hate It When Our Friends Become Successful. I think the one semi-clunkage on this album is You're the One for Me, Fatty. Which to me is basically kind of like Girlfriend in a Coma. It's just a silly song that is fine. I don't love it, don't hate it. Sometimes I skip it, sometimes I listen to it. But this one is just pure classic. Has one of my all-time favorite songs, Seasick Yet Still Docked. Tomorrow, I mean, just not a bad song on this whole album. And on the Morrissey ranking for the NME, he put it at number 6. And I had it at number 6. Look at that. Look at that. All right, now we're getting into the top 5. I realize you've probably hung yourself 10 minutes ago, and I'm just still sitting here blabbing. Anyway, number 5 from 1987, produced by Morrissey and Marr. This was the Smiths' final studio album, Strange Ways, Here We Come. This album is just chock full, just a total classic. This album is only slightly less better than Queen is Dead because of one song, and that is the song Girlfriend in a Coma. Again, I don't hate that song, but I think that this thing got so tight, the ranking, that one song made a difference. This ranking was really tight at this point. Tighter than an Amish virgin's snapper, if you will. But anyway, it has a rush and a push. I love that song. I started something I couldn't finish. Oh my God. Death of the Disco Dancer. Holy smokes. Stop me if you think you've heard this one before. Last night I dreamt that somebody loved me. Oh my God. Damn. Unhappy Birthday. Paint a Vulgar Picture. Death at One's Elbow. I Won't Share You. Man. Oh my God. I love this album. Again, it was the last album by the Smiths, and Morrissey himself put that one at number 7. And for me, it's number 5. Now it's getting tough. Now we're in the top 4, and this one is from 1988, produced by Stephen Street. This is Morrissey's solo debut album, Viva Hate. It's just all good. My God, this is the jam right here. There's really not a bad song on this entire album. If I had to pick a favorite song off this album, it would be Every Day is Like Sunday, which I know is probably my favorite all-time song of all time. I know it's not exactly a deep cut, but you can deep lick my ass, okay? Apart from that, there's really not a bad song on this entire album. If I had to pick I can't even pick a weakest song off this album. Of course, came out, after the Smiths broke up. It was his solo debut, and just, oh my God. And the Enemy ranking, Morrissey himself put that one at number 17. No, my friend, no. What are you thinking? Anyway, now, number 3. This was actually the toughest decision on the entire ranking for me, going between 2 and number 3. For many years, I thought this was actually my second favorite Morrissey album, but as I listened to the catalog in chronological order when I first did this ranking, this one just fell just slightly lower than number 2, and it's from 2004, produced by Jerry Finn. You Are the Quarry, and holy cow! There's not a bad song on this entire album. Before this album came out, it had been 7 years since his last release with Maladjusted. As I said earlier, I really like Maladjusted a lot. Some people didn't like it. But man, this was an album that absolutely blew me away when it came out. My expectations were sort of tempered for it when it first came out. And I think this not only reinvigorated the fan base, it reinvigorated him. This tour was absolutely amazing. He just seemed to be like breathing fire on that tour. And I just absolutely love this album. I listen to this album at least probably once a week still, honestly. I mean, it's hard to believe that this album is almost 20 years old. That is crazy. I just now thought of that. But America Is Not the World, Irish Blood, English Heart. There's not a bad song on this entire album. I'm not even going to try and pick a weakest one because it just doesn't exist. This was probably my favorite tour I ever got to see. I actually saw this tour twice. Man, I love it. Number 3 for me. And on the NME ranking list, Morrissey also had it at number 3. So that's a good one. For me, number 2 from 1986, produced by Morrissey and Marr. This is the Smiths' third album, Queen is Dead. Nothing much to see here, just the greatest band of all time at their greatest. Again, not a bad song on this entire album. Oh my God, I love this album. The title track, Frankly, Mr. Shankly. I Know It's Over. Never had. There's not a bad song. You could go over the whole listing if you want. And you would just know that every song is perfect. There's not a bad second on this entire album, in my opinion. And on the NME ranking list, Morrissey had this one at number 15. Come on, Steve. Love you, but come on. And that makes this one number 1. This was the album that turned me on to Morrissey, gave birth to my fandom, corrupted my mind and body, if you will. This was the album that my classmate back in 1994 shared with me on a class field trip. I probably listened to it 4 times that day and just became obsessed overnight. And that is the 1990 album, Bona Drag. Every song on this album is absolutely perfect. There isn't a bad song on this entire album. There's not a bad second on this entire album. This was the album that gave birth to my obsession. And yes, I know technically it's a compilation. I know that. You can technically lick my ass. This is my all-time favorite album. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I know Morrissey has 2 new albums in the can ready to be released at some point, hopefully, this year or next year. And I don't care if both those albums are perfect. This will always be my favorite album of all time. For me, it's just the significance of giving birth to my fandom, and I love every single song on this album. I love every single second on this album. This is number one, hands down, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and forever. And on his ranking list for The Enemy, Morrissey had this at number 4. So very respectable, but this is the greatest album of all time. I will talk about lots of music on this channel, and this is the greatest album of all time. I will do probably more of a deep run on a lot of these albums. I know I want to kind of get through this in a relatively painless manner. Anyway, thank you very much. That was my ranking of the greatest artist of all time, Stephen Patrick Morrissey. I want to thank you so much for watching this video. Go out, support your local record store, like this one right here, Melody Records in beautiful Chico, California, my hometown. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I'll talk to you next time.